Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for coming to the Charter Revision Commission meeting. I see that we have 100% attendance, and thank you everyone for agreeing to meet today at 3 instead of at 4. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from December 20th, 2017.
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Smith.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. On our old business, at our last meeting we had talked about the Article 9 transition separability, and it had to do with primarily with compensation. As to where that was, you'll see before you today a findings on that. And so I don't know if, since we just received that, if people want to have a discussion on that today or wait till our next meeting.
Mr. Chair, I did have a chance to review the information in advance of the meeting and would be happy to hold at least a partial discussion of the information.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I have two questions that at a future meeting or whatever, if someone can give me an answer today. So I would like to at least discuss that.
Okay. So I don't know which of you would like to go first? Justin, you spoke up first.
Mr. Chair, I want to, I guess I'll just briefly state my appreciation to the folks who gave us all this information and spent the time and energy to gather the data. Certainly it's very helpful to us. If there's a formal proposal circulating out there of what we might want to do with this information, I think that would be my main question. You know, what specific proposal are we looking at? Is it to change the city charter to increase the amount of money or other benefits that are provided to members of the city council or the mayor? Have we been presented with this information simply as information and education, given some of the questions that we did receive from the public about salary and compensation for city council members over the last year? So I think it would be helpful based on this information, which is available to the public, if there is a specific proposal. I think that would be very helpful for this commission to hear that and then to be able to debate and discuss it. Certainly, for my part, reviewing the information, be it very helpful. It did not cause me to formulate any specific change in my mind that I would want to propose to the charter at this time.
Mr. Chair, I believe that when our Human Resource Director came forward, they were already planning to look at the mayor's salary. And it would be very helpful if we had someone come back to us to tell us what, from what they found, what they were feeling. And I do have questions as far as the Omaha numbers. They show that they're both full-time and part-time, and therefore they have a base salary and they also receive benefits. I was just wondering if that base salary is just based on that 36.53%. And with the St. Paul line item, it was $60.58 paid 40 hours per pay period. We don't know how many pay periods. Is there just one per month, as is with the city of Sioux Falls, or is it twice a month? I'd like to have a number for that one. I know that when I was on city council that we looked at Omaha many times for some of the legislation that we were looking at. So it would be helpful if we had answers to, well, I would like to have answers to those questions.
Okay. Anything else? I guess the comment that I would like to make is this came up as we were reviewing this, and since it is Article 9, that was our last, as we went through on that one. It came up at the end, and it was there. We knew it would take some time to get there, but I think at least having this report now puts us in a position where we have some information, so when we start the process going through, we're going to at least have some starting point as to what is there. To me, the interesting thing I found on the report was benefit eligible, as to where they were benefit eligible and where they weren't, because that makes a significant difference in compensation. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, and I think, I guess what I would be proposing is that when we start going through the charter, that this next time we would start at the end and go through 987 on our first meeting, and then go forward, so we'll have this issue, because we know that this is an issue we want to at least discuss and have it at the start of the process rather than at the end.
Mr. Chair, your comments did prompt some additional questions that I would have, especially in light of Commissioner Aguilar's questions. So at this point, I guess it would be helpful for me, and pardon my ignorance on the subject, to know a little more specifics in terms of what the city council members in Sioux Falls receive by way of benefits. I would guess that it sounds like there are no benefits paid over and above the salary. And then I think there were also some comments made during some of the public remarks, some of the members of the current members of the city council, perhaps even, that if not some kind of increase in compensation for members of the city council to constitute compensation for all the extra hours that they put in for constituent service and whatnot. What are there in terms of office space, phone lines, the ability to send out mailings to constituents in their districts or citywide? Those kinds of questions, I guess, would be something I would have to help me understand better what infrastructure exists right now for members of the city council, not just for them to do their jobs on the city council, but also for constituent service. And then secondly, what the extent of the benefits are. And I don't know about the other members of the commission, but it might also be helpful to know a little bit more about what benefits the mayor receives. The charter sets the salary of the mayor, but I don't believe it sets anything regarding what additional benefits over and above salary the mayor would receive from doing his or her job. So that might be helpful as well.
Okay, I think as we go through the charter, there's an item, we made a revision at one time about a retirement plan and a pension plan, where there was, one was old and had been phased out, where we took some action on that. I'd have to go back to look at the details on that. But I think the other item is, that we need to come up with it is, do we expect that council members, that it be a full-time job or a part-time job, as to where that should be and how that should go about? Because I think that is the other item that we need to look at, is because to some extent that could very well make a significant difference as to who wants to run. If it is a full-time job and they give up what they're doing now to take this on, or if it is a part-time job, just how that, kind of how that works out as to what the expectations are on that. I think that is to me, that is a significant item as to who would be willing to serve. And I think there are benefits to going either way, but we just need to look at that and be cognizant as to, for instance, if the expectation is that somebody is spending 20 or 25 hours a week, it's going to be difficult for them to do their job. And I gets really sensitive when people are hourly versus salaried, have their own business versus an employee, as to how all that goes. I think there's sometimes there's a lot of factors that go into that, and so we have to look at that holistically as to what is there in the intent and where we want it to be, where we think it should be on that.
Mr. Chair, I would add that I hate to keep piling on to the information that will be helpful during this evaluation, but we're fortunate enough here on the commission to have a former member of the City Council, and Commissioner Aguilar has been kind enough to share her experience with the workload, the number of hours per week from the role as a member of the City Council, and we've actually heard public comment from a couple of members, current members, and other former members of the City Council on the number of hours per week that they put in. And it would be helpful to have a little bit more information, even if it's just personal testimonies like we've already heard, on what level of the time invested by current and former members of the City Council is, for lack of a better term, by choice, in order to go perhaps above and beyond in the service of constituents, which is definitely admirable and appreciated, and what amount of time current and former members of the City Council would say is absolutely necessary to fulfill the duties, maybe even the minimum duties, of serving on the Sioux Falls City Council. I think that would be helpful because if the consistent testimony from our current and former city councilors is that it does take at least 20 to 25 hours or more per week to do justice to the minimum expected job duties of a city council member, then I think that's going to be important and will factor into at least my consideration of how much they should receive in compensation as set by the charter.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would appreciate hearing from all the councilors that same information that Justin talked about.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Pauline. However, we have new council members right now, so we would have to give them the time to really get into and get orientated to their position. Some things are really a surprise and there are options, but constituent services are what this community expects. And so I think that we have to probably guess that most of the council members are spending a great amount of time on that. Well, maybe not a great amount of time, and it varies between council members. But I would say that if we would make a formal invitation, it might be a good idea. But give those new council members a little bit of time to really get acclimated.
That is a great segue into our next section. Discussion of future meeting dates. Are there elections next spring? There's not an election next spring?
No.
Okay, so the next time there would be a ballot is going to be, okay, I have to do my math here. April of 2020. Okay, so that, this is 18. So we'll have all of 19 to work on this. And so I guess the question would be is, would you like to start work on this, let's say a year from now? It's out there. Or do you want to continue working on it now or let some of these new people have a year under their belt before we have the discussion?
Mr. Chair, for my part, I think this is a big enough issue because I do think it involves the much, much bigger discussion that you raised, which is, do we need to consider expanding the job description or role from part-time to, full part, whatever you want to call it, or maybe even full-time, or expanding the compensation. I think it wraps into a discussion of the fundamental role of the members of the City Council. And so, for my part, I think it would be helpful for me to have the rest of 2018, maybe 1, 2 meetings, even 3, to really drill down on this one big issue. Whereas in 2019, I'm confident that there will be other issues for proposal on the 2020 ballot that we'll consider. It'd be great to have this one fully discussed and decisions reached by this commission before we ever start on the separate issues in the last half of 2019.
Chair, I would agree. And I think that probably we could take the summer off and start in the fall.
My wife and family would appreciate that.
I'm just trying to look at my calendar here as to what would work. So if we were to look, what do people's calendars look like? Because typically we meet on Wednesdays.
Yes.
On Wednesday, September 12th. And I will tell you that I'm offered that date because I know I have another meeting in town that day, and I'll be in Sioux Falls. September 12th. 4 p.m. Is this space available? Okay. So at this point, do you want to schedule that one, or do you want to schedule a series of meetings?
Mr. Chair, while we're looking at dates, I would pose the question to City Clerk, City Attorney. At what point does the current term for members of this Charter Revision Commission run out? Is it the end of 2018? And oh, it's probably on the front of my binder, isn't it? 2019 for me.
March 31st, well, there's some different terms, sorry. Sue and Jill are both ending March 31st, 2019.
Me too.
And Justin. And it looks like Pauline and Bob are March 31st, 2020.
Well, there's definitely another reason why I'd like to see
Yeah.
if we can get these
Oh,
done.
yes.
Some in 2018. There'll be a changing of the guard.
Okay. If we're going to stick to Wednesdays in October, the 3rd would work for me.
The 7th, oh, the 3rd.
How does the 3rd work for you? November 7th?
Mr. Chair, just so you know, the first Wednesdays of the month is Planning Commission meetings that start at 6, just to let you know.
Well,
And you'll be out here
I
by
don't see,
6 then.
I don't think we've had a meeting go much over an hour 15.
Right.
Okay.
So if we start at 4, we should be done by 5:15 or 5:30?
Just letting you know.
Okay. And then if we were to stick with that one, it would go December 5th. But that could always be changed as things go.
Mr. Chair, one final comment, I think. I think in addition to inviting all the current members of the City Council to comment on these questions that we've raised, I do think it will be helpful to reach out to some of the most recent former members of the City Council to supplement what Commissioner Aguilar will be able to tell us from her experience on the Council, to hear from some of the most recent outgoing members, Councilman Rolfing, and some of the others who most recently departed, Councilwoman Erpenbach and a couple of those.
Mr. Chair, I also believe that we need to get the mayor involved in this due to the fact that if we were to look at a percentage, if we were going to increase the mayor's salary, that would also be in the charter, and that would automatically increase the council member's salary because it's a percentage, and we may have to look at that percentage question.
So a multifaceted issue. Okay, so I think we have those meeting dates set, September 12th, October 3rd, November 7th, and December 5th. Everyone fine with that? So I think we'll go with those for now. But I think as we get closer, if things come up, we can look at those and see if those things need to move. We have a wedding coming up this fall, and that's what I'm looking at is I know I need to be certain places. So, so I think anything else for new business for anyone? Okay. Public input.
Teresa Staley, at-large city councilor, and how ironic that you bring up public input, the topic of the day. I am grateful that you included this study with the report that we just received, and it's been interesting to look at what the different communities are offering. So piggybacking and coming off of what you just said about talking to the council members, I have a suggestion. Because I know from talking privately with my colleagues that we all approach things a little differently. So I would suggest you make a survey so that we don't have to say council member A is spending 5 hours a week and council member C is doing 30 hours a week. That have a survey and just and say, you know, break it down. You can say how many hours a week do you spend on the phone with a constituent? How many hours a week are you spending in extra committee meetings? Name them if you would like to. Because, you know, we do a lot of things outside of these chambers. How many hours a week are you spending attending events? And that could be chamber things. It can be the Mary Jo Arboretum fundraiser. It could be neighborhood watch groups. I mean, I got all sorts of things that people want me to attend. And I think it's important to go to those things and to be with those people. And I'm finding sometimes I go, I'm the only council member there, but they're happy that I'm there. But it takes some time. I will tell you that I spend a lot of time on the phone, and especially when we have issues like this input issue coming up. People call me, and you call them back, and I mean, you can't just say, well, you got 2 minutes, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes. You know, it takes a long time, and you want to treat them with responsiveness. So that takes up a huge part of my day. We're answering emails. That takes a lot of time as well. And you don't want to just ignore people. I don't think that's what our constituents want from us. So there's more to it than just coming here to a meeting. And yesterday I met with the mayor at 3 o'clock, and we were here until 10 o'clock, and we didn't have a break. We had this much time to eat. And that happens a lot of times. They bring some sub sandwiches in, and we might have 10 or 15 minutes to have a bite, to shove it in our mouths in between these meetings. So I would say to anyone considering this job, if you're doing it right, you're going to lose a lot more than you're ever going to gain. And I have lost a lot. I mean, my life is, heart and soul has been put into this job. So when we talk about benefits, I thought that was interesting to look at what some of these other cities are offering with less salaries than, where was that one, Jim, that we go up here to Billings, Montana. Their annual salary is $7,200, and they are offering benefits. And then we've got some that are offering more compensation than we are, but here at Topeka, Kansas, $20,000 benefits. We're at $18,600. So I'm proposing that you do a kind of an anonymous blind survey, so council members don't have to be out there naked, so to speak. I would also propose that you take that 15% that we're getting paid of the mayor's salary, and I would bump that up to 20% of the base pay. And I'm just saying this is the same thing teachers ask for all the time. You know, you have the base pay when you're starting to teach, and then everything goes up from there. So I would advocate for that. And I'm here to advocate for being allowed to have an option to our health insurance. I'm an employee of the city of Sioux Falls. I'm also self-employed. I'm a single woman. And I pay $730 a month for my health insurance. It's over half of what I get for my city council salary. So if I was given the option of saying, you know, you can come on board with the group policy, I jump at it. And my Blue Cross and Blue Shield people have said, Teresa, if you can get it on a group policy, you're going to get a better deal. But I teach piano. I don't have an employer. I'm self-employed, as are, I think, a lot of people who are coming into this job. You also made mention, Mr. Timian, about, you know, getting compensated for mailings or reaching out to our constituents. And I will tell you, I've spent over $10,000 of my own money reaching out to my constituents in mailings. And I haven't taken a dime of city money, aside from what I'm earning, to do that, because I think it is so important that we connect to our citizens. So at the end of the day, when it's all said and done for me, I hope people will say, well, she really gave it her best and tried. You may not agree with me, but I care about people, and I'm caring about connecting to people and listening to them. And it takes time and energy. So those are another thing. So we got the health insurance. I also think you could up that stipend you're giving us for gas, because I'll tell you right now, my time driving around town is all city council miles. So that is another thing, the wear and tear on a person's vehicle. A little thing you could give us that wouldn't cost a whole lot of money. And this study that we're talking about, you know, we see a lot of financial things passing through. We paid, I think, about $62,000 for that study. And I'm thinking to myself, gee, that could have easily handled 3 city council positions. I mean, the citizens are getting, if we give it our heart and soul, they're getting $18,000 for us, working very hard for them. I think it's they're getting a very reasonable value for what we're giving to them. So that is my 2 cents.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your comments and suggestions. Well, we have some ideas there. Anyone else? Okay. Open discussion.
That brought up another point, something that Teresa said. And there was a stipend for transportation, but I don't know how that was set for council members, and probably the mayor too. We really do need a breakdown.
Was that in charter or?
That's not in charter, and so I'm guessing that can be taken care of outside of charter. But I don't know how it was originally decided what it would be. I'm guessing that it's based on some type of reimbursement that employees get, maybe, I don't know. But we need to look at that total compensation.
So
And that I don't look at that, I mean, that's just a reimbursement in my mind's eye. That's not
So I think it would be helpful when we have our September meeting, if we could have a summary of the total package that is currently there, that in the charter and outside the charter, as to how that works. So I think give us a better understanding as to how that works.
Mr. Chairman, another example, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Aguilar, it's my understanding that members of the City Council get a cell phone provided by the city or a stipend toward their personal cell phone. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're correct. But most use their own, and then there's a stipend because it's your city telephone number is on your phone then. Yeah, again, I don't look at that as a benefit necessarily.
Certainly don't disagree. My point is just, I think these are examples of things that it would be helpful to have
Right.
in a complete breakdown of those types of infrastructure out there for the help or assistance of members of the city council to provide their services.
Well, for this being a off year without election, I think we're going to have a fair amount of work on one subject.
Mr. Chair, I think it's been something that's needed to be looked at for a while. And again, this impacts the mayor also, and so I think we need to be cognizant of, there's been a lot of discussion in the city over the years as to the mayor's compensation.
And it's interesting how that works as to who is speaking, because the same dollar amount has different connotations to different people as to how that goes. So, anything else for open discussion? I want to thank all of you for taking time out on such a beautiful Sioux Falls day and coming down and meeting today. And with that, meeting adjourned.